very good evening to you. It's just coming up to 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m. in Sydney and here in northern Tasmania. It's just before 1 o'clock in the morning in San Francisco, 4 o'clock in the morning in New York. It's 8 o'clock in the morning in London and almost 9 o'clock in the morning in Paris. So a very warm welcome to you over the world. This is VK7 Whiskey on behalf of the Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club with the Slow Morse course. And this is week 3. Now, over the next 30 minutes, we continue with the letters that you learned last week. Hotel, Bravo, Delta, India, Juliet, H, B, D, I, J, and introduce new letters for you to learn for next week. And don't forget, during the day, if you happen to see a sign or a number plate with a character you recognize, you can practice by just saying it quietly to yourself or even thinking it with dits and das. Now, first, we're going to begin with the manual Morse sheet like last week. Now, this will only be for a few minutes as I've prepared a separate file for those who want to continue using the manual Morse sheet, and it's called week 3. And this will also be posted with the live stream, which will also be saved on YouTube. Right. So after the manual Morse session, which is only a few minutes, we'll practice the letters H, B, D, I, J, Hotel, Bravo, Delta, India, Juliet, using Farnsworth spacing. Remember where the characters will be centered about 8 or 9 words per minute, but with large gaps between them. Then as you progress, the gaps will become slightly shorter. Now, the reason for doing this is because if you start learning at 5 words a minute or even slower, it's very difficult to make the transition, or at least that's my experience with many students. Right, now, have a paper and pencil ready to write down what you receive, and the manual Morse sheet, of course, ready with your finger on the start position. So, don't forget, it's not just about learning the characters and listening to the CW, the Morse. There are lots of tips that are given in this course. Please stand by, switching to CW. This is VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu. with the slow Morse course on behalf of the Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club. Now, what did you receive? It was no mistake that I actually sent 2 characters at the very start and 2 characters at the end in close succession. Because if you're using the manual Morse code chart and you don't know the characters, for example, the first 2 I sent were Uniform Romeo, which is an abbreviation for your, as in your report, which is the next word, Uniform Romeo. So, did-da, did-da-did. And hopefully your brain, your mind would have cottoned onto the 2, and you would have taken the first one and slid your finger up because it started with a dit, diddy-da, 2 dits, and you would have found the letter U. And then, of course, did-da-dit, the letter R. But I didn't send it again, I only sent it once, but you did get a clue because the next word, Romeo Papa Tango, RPT, what I was using was an abbreviation for your report. And then there are 2 abbreviations, because the next letters I sent were Golf, India, Victor, November, but also Golf, Victor, November. Your report given, and then the next word, India, November, in RST. Now we talked about RST, readability, strength and tone, and I talked about the long dash that's sometimes given on signal reports last week instead of a full 9. So if you were giving readability 5, strength 9, tone 9, then often you'll hear people giving the readability number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dit, 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 dit. But then instead of hearing the number 9, da, 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 dit, some people just send a long da, 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 just a refresher. Now when you're calling CQ, and if you tune round the bands, you'll hear stations calling CQ. Da-dee-da-dit, da-da-dee-da. Da-dee-da-dit, da-da-dee-da. Now, I'm not talking so much about the letters here, I'm talking about the protocol that you use. And usually it's using CQ, 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 DE, of or from, and then your call sign 3 times. So if I was sending out CQ, I would, on CW, Morse code, I'd send CQ, 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 DE, Delta Echo, of or from, VK7, Tango, Alpha Zulu, VK7, Tango, Alpha Zulu, VK7, Tango, Alpha Zulu. Now, at the end of that, I might just send the letter K for over. So, da-di-da-dit, da-da-di-da, da-di-da-dit, da-da-di-da, da-di-da-dit, da-da-di-da, da-da-dit-dit, di-di-di-da, da-di-da, da-da-di-di-dit, da-di-da, da-da-di-dit. And that was VK7TAZ, but I'd send it 3 times and then follow it with the letter K for over, and I'd be listening to see if any other station picked me up. So the important aspect about this is when you're calling CQ, usually it is 3 times CQ and 3 times the call sign followed by the letter K for over. We can get into more details by adding end of transmission, but that comes later. And a way to remember letters, well, there are lots of things on the internet to remember letters, but for example, here's one which we haven't covered yet. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Beethoven's 5th is the letter V for victory. Di-di-di-da, di-di-di-da. And I'll give you another little insight to the letter L. Did-da-did-it, to L with you. didarded it to L with you. Just a little tip. Okay. Now what we're going to do is with the letters that you learnt last week. And first of all, I'm going to send each letter once and then each letter 3 times before we get into a mixed up group using these letters. So we're going to have 5-letter character groups using the letters Hotel, Bravo, Delta, India, Juliet. Let's go through them once and then each letter 3 times before we get into the character groups. Please stand by. This is VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu switching to CW. We have the letters that you learnt last week. Hotel, Bravo, Delta, India, Juliet. Now I'm going to send 8 groups of 5 letters with them in 3 completely odd orders. Let's see how you go to be able to copy them. Here we go. Okay, this is VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu on behalf of the Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club with the slow Morse course, and I sent 8 groups of 5 characters, 5 letters, using this week's letters, and this is what I sent. Bravo India Delta Hotel Hotel, Delta Juliet Delta India Delta, Hotel India Delta India Juliet, India Bravo Juliet, Juliet Delta India Hotel India. And the last 3 groups were Bravo Delta India Juliet, India Hotel India Bravo Delta, and the final one, Hotel India Juliet Delta Bravo. Now, I wonder if you realised that the actual spacing between each letter became shorter, particularly in the last 2 groups. It was only subtle, but if you made a comparison with what I was sending earlier and the last group, it was actually a little bit faster. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to mix the letters with last week's letters. So it's this week's letters, Hotel Bravo Delta India Juliet, mixed with last week's letters, Alpha X-Ray Sierra Echo Tango. Alpha X-Ray Sierra Echo Tango. Right, here they come. The letters that you've learned last week and the letters that you've learned this week. Please stand by, switching to CW. back with you on voice. This is Nick, VK7 Whiskey on behalf of the Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club, and for identification purposes, this is VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu. Right. Well, they had a group of a mixture of last week's letters and this week's letters, and this is what I sent. The first one was Sierra Hotel Echo Delta X-Ray. The next one was Delta X-Ray Tango X-Ray Sierra, followed by Bravo India Delta Echo Sierra, and then Bravo Echo X-Ray Delta Juliet. And the next one was Delta India Tango Sierra India, followed by Bravo Echo Alpha Delta Sierra. The last two, Sierra India Delta Echo Sierra, followed by Tango Echo Sierra Tango India. Well, I hope you managed to copy that little lot. Now, did I mention last week about the error message? If you make an error, don't worry about it. You can go back to the letter that you made a mistake or a word on, but the special character of 8 dits, you'll hear that, as I said previously, but you don't have to know it at this stage, because just be aware of it. If you suddenly hear a string of dits and you're sure it's not a number 5, well, there's quite a difference, remember. 8 dits as opposed to 5. Now, next week's letters. Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Mike. Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Mike. OP, QRM. Well, OP is an abbreviation for the operator, and QRM is man-made interference. I'm suffering from QRM. It must be the solar panels, or maybe it's the power pole at the end of the road. OP, QRM. And this is what Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Mike sounds like. I'll go through them once and then each one 3 times. Please stand by, switching to CW. Okay, well there you have the letters that you need to learn for next week. Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo, Mike. And I hope you did well today. Now, don't forget, I've mentioned these resources before, but the ARRL, the RSGB, and other countries provide slow Morse transmissions. There's also the availability of different CW learning apps on the internet. And locally here, across Australia, the Wireless Institute of Australia runs VK2 Whiskey India from Dural, north of Sydney, on 3.699 megahertz, a continuous CW training aid, 24 hours a day. And then on top of that, remember Tuesday nights have the slow Morse net. Well, it's a slow Morse evening rather than a net on 40 meters run by VK2 Kilo India. And you can email Mark, VK2 Kilo India, on qlz.com. Right. Now, last night I took a listen on 40 meters and I was hearing Japanese and American stations coming through. So if we can hear you, you should be able to hear us. So if you're learning, have a tune in on a Tuesday evening. That's local time here. It basically goes all night on 40 meters. Right. If you're looking for the streaming edition and the previously streamed editions of the Slow Morse course, thanks to Jordan, VK3 Alpha Charlie Uniform, you'll find him on YouTube. But if you jump on YouTube, you will actually just conduct a simple search for Slow Morse course, and up it will come. Now, the other aspect about Morse code CW is low power. Low power and what is needed for a minimum contact. Well, you've got to make contact with the station, whether you're calling CQ or you're answering their CQ. You're going to exchange signal strength, and that really is the first thing you should do, because you'll know how well the other station is going to receive you as they find out when you send them a report, readability, strength and tone, how well they're being received. Because if conditions are a bit difficult, often what stations do, regardless whether they're using low power or high power, if it's difficult to read that station, perhaps because of atmospherics, man-made noise or static noise, well, people tend to repeat QTH, name, power, whatever, so that the message gets through. Right, we're almost out of time. We've got less than 2 minutes to go. But as I say, next week we'll talk a bit about QRP and what's needed for a minimum contact. 7-3s on behalf of the Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club, situated at Launceston in Northern Tasmania. And this is VK7 Whiskey. Looking forward to catching up with you next week. VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu is clear, and thanking the digital guys who operate close to this frequency for putting up with us. And I shall explain why we use this frequency next week. VK7 Tango Alpha Zulu is now clear, and QSY for the technical net down on 3567. Thanks, Steve. Cheers.